Silence is golden. Actually, you know what? I'm going to see if I can put in headphones. Actually, hold on. Silence is golden unless something needs to be said.
Power on. Connected.
All right. It's not working. Camera. I don't think this is working. Okay. I think I'm back. Let's see if I can hear myself or if audio. Okay. I think this is working. Okay. This is for myself and anyone else that's interested. And partially because when I tried to express this sentiment in public TitanX spaces, I was derided as a fudder, right? Spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt, even though I have no fear about this. I have no uncertainty, and I have no doubt about it. And it started this morning. This is like an ethical distraction from crypto, but it needs to be said for my own conscience. So it started when some mellow project that I have no idea about, that's not part of the TitanX ecosystem, is not part of the TitanX ethos, that project rugged. I understand that it's part of the House of Warlords crew that also rugged its community. And so I hope people didn't get hurt by that. And what I saw on Twitter was the willingness for TitanX leaders to call out this rug, even though it has nothing to do with TitanX. People were like saying, you see, this is what happens if you don't follow the ethos. There's a rug. And I would say, right on. That could be true, right? There's truth to it. And those same people that are calling out this unethical behavior have refused to call out the most obvious conflict of financial interest in the TitanX ecosystem. That when I called it out on a public space, people didn't want to hear it. People don't want to hear this. And so people put it under the rug. Instead of rugging, people put it under the rug. So shout out to Builder Lee, Bullish Lee, who has created a draft document. And he basically said, I'm going to read not the whole document, and it's really good. It's a sign that the no insiders clause actually has at least some breath, some life to it. At least there's a possibility, because in Builder Lee's draft, the bottom line, private spaces are fine for collaboration. They are not fine for power. When they create privilege without transparency, they undermine the ethos entirely. Groups that are open, paid, but accessible or publicly declared with no special advantage are generally acceptable, provided they do not breach transparency or the no insiders principle. Let's just say this is an amazing first start. At least this issue finally is being addressed. And thank you to Bullish Lee for taking a first stab. And then he asked for builder feedback. I'm not a builder, but I'm giving feedback. And I say, and this is my 2 pieces of addition to what is a great, though complicated document and needs dialogue and alignment around. It's not like a document makes any difference, because it's actually why there's governance, because the absence of governance in decentralized finance, when there are admin keys and when there are private insider groups, even the perception of unfairness and lack of transparency means it's unfair and not transparent. So I say, great start. First piece of feedback. I'm not a builder, but I'm an investor. I say, no insiders. You say, no private allocations, seed deals, or privileged early access. I like that. You say, all token launches must be public, fair, and equally accessible. I'm with that. Any builder or protocol caught violating this principle risks being disavowed by the community. That's like, that needs to be negotiated, because that piece, any builder or protocol caught violating, that's like a gotcha clause. That's what we call a gotcha clause. And they risk being disavowed by the community. It's like the risk of community shame is the inhibitor. I would say articulate that one if you want it to have any teeth. And then I say add these things. 1, no private paid groups associated with any community funded or supported asset or protocol. It's very different than what is written. I say no private paid groups associated with any community funded or supported asset or protocol. And then I go on, anyone can do a paid private group, but there's a higher level of ethical responsibility when a protocol owner places a community protocol behind a pay-to-play paywall, where even the perception of unfairness due to lack of transparency is a violation of the quote, no insiders, unquote guideline. Not only, and this is in response to the emphasis put on early access, and I say not only in early access, but in ongoing ethical behavior that is congruent with the no insiders and fair access to good and accessible intelligence. This is about making early transparency and fair access extend from launch through the life of the protocol or asset. You see, this pisses me off because when there's no dialogue on these kinds of things, there's an erosion of integrity. There's an erosion of expectations. So then I say, let me give you a second piece of ethos feedback. I say add what I call a builder communication ethos. And then I say, maybe we call it the ongoing dialogue clause. The ongoing dialogue clause, where each builder is free to communicate how he or she wishes, and each builder has an ethical responsibility when they receive a builder 1 to 8% fee, and or they have some admin keys or management controls over a protocol and funds. They have an ethical responsibility to be in consistent communications throughout the life of the protocol, not just during promotional times, in any one of a number of communication platforms that are accessible and available to any community member. That means X Spaces, Telegram, Discord, or any other community accessible forum. Any builder failure to communicate consistently with his or her investor group for some period of time, say 1 month, for example, for a builder developer, vacation or time off from communications. Let's say we give a 1 month grace period. Otherwise, the failure to communicate in these publicly accessible forums will be seen as a violation of the ethos expectation of ongoing dialogue between a protocol owner of admin keys and money derived from investor participation. So yeah, no insider groups that are paid for protocol owners or owners, and that means admin keys or assets. Because ethically and potentially legally, the perception is evidence. So there's too much gray area when the ethos says, oh, we can have private paid groups as long as they blah, 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 blah. No, we can have paid pride groups if there's a clear and non-negotiable legal and ethical boundary between the private group and money paid to the private group and the community public funds. This isn't private business. And when we conflate private business and community protocols, there's a total denigration of the no insiders guideline. It's unfair. It's clearly outside the ethos or the ethics of fair access and transparent communications. It's clearly outside of it. It's non-negotiable. Legally, that depends. Because I heard someone say, oh, it's illegal. I'm like, maybe. It depends on 2 things. 1, jurisdiction, and 2, cause of action. So don't talk to me about it's illegal or illegal. We don't know. This is about ethos, which is grounded in ethics. And it's not personal ethos, it's a shared ethos. It's through a dialogue, especially as a culture matures and evolves. So, in order for the TitanX ethos to get off the ropes and to get with its own program, it's going to require a multi-stakeholder dialogue and a negotiation. The fact that Bullish Lee has taken the initiative, right on. I support you 100%. And I have been raising this issue for months, and it's not that I'm so freaking great. I'm not. I just have a nose and a lot of experience as an ethics lawyer. And I went to law school not to make money out of the law. And in fact, I haven't practiced the law, but I went to understand how the system works. And I didn't want to become part of the lawyer advocacy crew where there are no ethics. It's only about advocacy, zealous advocacy for the client. So yeah, I became a mediator. I became an ethics lawyer. I taught ethics. I teach ethics. I practice ethics. And I understand governance. And I understand the absence of governance in DAOs. And I understand the conflicts of financial interest between private business and private enterprise and a community funded and participant oriented protocol. I understand it. And it's part of the reason why it pisses me off when I have voiced these things in public forums and people are like, don't want to hear it. And then when shit happens, people are like, oh, you see, this is what happens when the ethos is no. This is what happens when there's no dialogue. This is what happens when there are admin keys and no governance. This is what happens when there aren't clear and non-negotiable boundaries between private enterprise and community enterprise. It's not okay. People are like, oh, it's fine. People are in private paid groups all over the place. Yeah, for sure. And in order to have ethical and legal boundaries between private paid groups and what we're talking about here, which is decentralized finance, owner-controlled protocols, currently where there's radical power imbalances between owners and investors. So the no insiders clause must legally and ethically address private paid groups and have dialogue about it. No one's right here, but there are some definite wrongs. The wrong is that no insiders means no insiders. That's it. The perception of unfairness, the perception of unequal access to intelligence, particularly around a protocol that has assets, buy and burn assets. Genesis wallet assets in the vault. Buy and burn assets with admin keys under the control of an owner who has a private group. Come on. This idea that that's okay. Why? Because there's no governance forum. For me is like unacceptable. And that's me. This is my freedom of speech. absolutely non-negotiably unacceptable, and I invite a dialogue. It's not that I'm right. It's that I'm willing to express publicly, though it has been marginalized, in the public space is the one public space when I said, hey, how can we justify private paid groups with a promise of a DAO and dollars, investor dollars with admin keys behind a pay to play paywall? Come on. Come on. And in the one forum that there is, when I spoke that, publicly, I got targeted for FUD, spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt. People are like, I'm a builder. I don't want the FUD. I'm like, we don't want newcomers to hear this. I'm like, no. What we want is newcomers to hear a living, breathing dialogue, a living, breathing document that has viability, that has grit, that has tenacity, and that protects not just builders, but investors, protects everybody from the unethical and potentially illegal. Of course, if there was a rug from some mellow coin promoted by some, of course, that's potentially illegal. That's obvious. That's easy. The more difficult ones are when a person in a position of power and authority can flaunt an ethos which says no insiders. That's the harder one. That's the one that requires no fear, no uncertainty, and no doubt. That there requires a documentation, and there requires a dialogue, and there requires some constructive, not punitive accountability. This is not punitive. This is constructive accountability. We can separate the people from the problem. It may be unconscious. It may be unintentional. Maybe the intent is good. The impact is not good. The impact is a clear violation of ethical standards, of separation between private business and protocol funds and insider intel. Prove me wrong. Show me. Dialogue. Someone come, ask me a question, challenge me. That's what dialogue is about. That's actually why I became a mediator as opposed to an advocating lawyer, because I saw that there's no one side to any story. There are always, in every situation, multiple truths. People believe that I have the truth. No, each individual has a truth. Each team, each collective has a truth. And through dialogue and through depth of character and exposure of action to the light and transparency, we see when action is exposed transparently, we see the truth, not from personal truth. That's why transparency is critical to integrity and financial integrity and congruence and avoiding financial conflicts of interest. It's part of the reason why people have been advocating for no admin keys. And if there are admin keys, then at least have a governance structure in place, a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. If there are admin keys and there's a promise of a DAO, make it happen. That is part of giving light and transparency to what right now is a perception, for sure, among me, myself, and I, there's at least three of us here, a perception of incongruity with ethics and ethos that separate private enterprise from community enterprise, and understands that there are potential financial conflicts of interest and impacts when we start combining private intelligence that comes with private paid groups with community ownership of asset and what we contribute to that asset, even if it's locked up behind admin keys. Now, if I was mediating this thing, which I'm not, I would encourage people, the critical stakeholders here, to work this out privately and come to this community with a private agreement that respects the required boundaries between private enterprise and community enterprise, and that articulates those boundaries for everyone. This does not require punitive action. I'm assuming intent is good, but it does require constructive accountability. This is in the legal field what